We need another Dauphin, Manitoba. So what I'm going to suggest, and I understand if the RCMP are at the door, take me to the airport, but what I'm going to suggest is as follows. Would you do your country the service of thinking about how here in the Yukon, population about 35,000 people, 4 levels of government, over 100 NGOs working on these kinds of problems, many of you in the room here today. A vibrant First Nations community, which has its immense challenges and opportunities. You might, in fact, particularly because of the territorial status, be able to say to Ottawa, we would like to try the Dauphin experiment here. And this would not just involve one department in Ottawa. It would probably involve INAC, HRSDC, finance. But my sense is, should the territory as a community, as a government, as a legislature, ever decide that they wanted to engage in that kind of discussion, my bet is that despite, attitudes on occasion in Ottawa on all sides of the House are not terribly experimental, there might be a genuine openness. And besides, having made the request, if you're turned down, it strikes me you're in a better bargaining position on some other issues. But I leave that to my betters in this room to reflect upon. But I actually do think that we can do this in Canada. I actually do think, and I look, what people say, well, marginal tax rates, how much it's going to cost? Well, how much are we now spending for our existing system? What are the disincentives to work now? And I look at our Scandinavian friends, some of which Audrey and I will have to fess up, have had conservative governments for some time. And they have something like this. They don't call it this. They call it age insurance, which is way more generous and goes on for many more years longer than our employment insurance. But guess what? They're more competitive than we are on a global basis. Their return on investment for the private sector is higher. Their productivity is better. They are more efficient at business because they've made poverty and its eradication job one. So I'm making that case to you as a supplicant. I come here as a supplicant to all of you to think about that as you go through your remarkable day, and I will do my best throughout the day to be helpful or silent, whichever you determine to be in the best interest of this process. God bless, and thank you very much.
Senator, it was interesting to hear your initial comment about dollars. Well, not dollars more than principles, and something that the government has done and had us public servants implement, which is a step in the right direction, is, as you mentioned, increasing social assistance rates, indexing them to CPI, the wage exemption, increasing that. These are baby steps in the larger scheme of things, and but your ideas are interesting. And Whitehorse has been an experiment for many different ideas over the years, including the Community Wellness Court that Health and Social Services partners with justice in, and so certainly take your comments to heart.
Yeah, I think the senator threw out a challenge for the group, and that is to consider what a new direction might look like in terms of building bridges rather than just concentrating on the barriers. And I'd just like to suggest that maybe if we're going to look at a new direction, what we have to do is to change the conversation about how we see poverty. It just seems to me that there's an awful lot of talk and data about capital and money and funds and inappropriate incentives. And there's a lot of talk about, say, human capital, which we're looking at, and that's the quality of our workforce. But I'd like to suggest to you that maybe we ought to be looking, in terms of changing the conversation, is to take a look at what is called social capital. And that has to do with the quality of the relationships that we have in the community and the acknowledgement that we are interdependent and not just a bunch of individuals living in this community. Because, if you've got a crime problem, that's a reflection of the community. If you've got a poverty challenge, that's a reflection of the kind of community we're in. And so perhaps we can talk more about, or have more opportunity to look at, the quality of those relationships that we have in the community. And I'm reminded of something that Sigmund Freud said. I don't know when. I don't even know the guy. But he said the first person who throws an insult instead of a stone is the creator of civilization. So I want to invite you to throw some insults out to the group this morning, and but not too severely, because after all, we're Canadians.
I really appreciate the Senator's comments, particularly as he highlighted that the possibility of doing something and the very profound understanding that it makes both compassionate and economic sense. I think that's good to keep in mind. And I think on his comments, he might agree with me, despite the way he phrased things, that actually there are no persons who are homeless in Canada. There are no persons in poverty in Canada. Just the one statistics that he gave you, for example, that 75% of people in poverty are single moms, might help us to understand there are no persons in poverty. There are men in poverty, and there are women in poverty. And as we address these issues, we really need to keep that gender lens in mind, and the ways in which issues of abuse and sexual assault, single parenthood, are differently affecting women.